Welcome back to the latest episode of Inside In-Game Insights. Every month, somebody from Team AdInMo will speak to gaming and advertising industry experts about the latest trends, the hottest topics, and the future of in-game advertising. This month, I had the great pleasure to speak to my dear friend, Richard Robinson. In this video, Richard and I discuss what impact Web3 is having on the future of game monetization. And we talk about what that may mean for current free-to-play ad-supported games. So we have here Richard Robinson, longtime entrepreneur, investor, and now entrepreneur in residence at Animoca Brands. I should also say he's a longtime friend of mine and an advisor to AdInMo. So question one, Richard, can you tell us a bit about Animoca Brands and your role there? What does Animoca do? What companies do they own and invest in? And what brought you to Animoca?
Yeah, thanks, my old friend. Animoca Brands has been around for about a decade, gaming company, and the founder and chairman, Yatsio, is an old friend of mine, 1997. We first got to know each other during the dot-com boom in the curiously fragrant harbor that is Hong Kong. And we always stayed in touch. He's originally from Austria. You know, I'm from the States, from Boston. So we were long-suffering foreign entrepreneurs in China, kind of trading notes. And I was always a gigantic fan of his and what he'd built. And around 2017, he saw CryptoKitties and became enamored with things that were on chain, because Animoca had 5 of the top maybe 20 games on the App Store and on Apple back when it was first launched. And they all got nerfed, as it's called, like in a game when your really good gun gets turned into a useless Nerf gun, or you lose the power of your wizards, or your 5 fucking games get pulled off the App Store, and you're like, what are we doing? What's going on here? And it was a black hole. And actually, Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, he had a wizard on World of Warcraft that also had its powers reduced, nerfed, and he vowed, as Yat did, to try to get from under the yoke of these fiefdoms, the Lord Zuckerberg and, House of Google and, Activision Blizzard, which, I understand you guys are still working closely with and they have their place, but to be able to have independence around that, because we are all like Neo in the Matrix in bondage, and we don't know that we're in bondage. And the vision of Animoca is the open metaverse with interoperability and decentralization and permissionless, trustless, on-chain digital assets. And I bought into that vision. And I often say that Web3 is my act 3. And as my third act, I'm sort of all in. I hope there's a 4th and 5th act, maybe the curtain calls along the way instead of just curtains. But Yad asked me to be an advisor in early 2021, ostensibly because I'd been through some cycles before, Web 1, Web 2, smartphone, China. China can innovate. And now top 3 startups in the world are: number 1, ByteDance, TikTok; number 2, SpaceX; number 3, Shein. 2 out of 3 are Chinese. The iPhone is a joke. It's a toy. And Web 2, like, Facebook has no business model. Facebook has no business model for years. Web 1, I remember back in the day, Amazon, I can get books at the library or a bookstore down. It's a joke. And then Web 3, like monkey JPEGs, harumph. So my job was to coach and cajole and cheerlead and counsel some of the staff as an advisor. And then after a few months, I said, thank you for the opportunity. I found my next Everest to climb. I'm going to descend from this summit through the clouds into the swamps to climb back up again and be the dumbest son of a bitch in the room, which is not just false modesty. It's true. I had all this skills, experience, network, done 8 startups over the years, but I don't know from blockchain, or I bought some NFTs, but there's blockchain, and then there's, DeFi technology and cryptocurrency, tokens and NFTs and all kinds of other practices that I had to start from zero, which is a delicious, beautiful, beautiful gift. So I was in the investment team and we were the most prolific investor. We are an operator, Animoca Brands, and also an investor, sort of like Tencent, but much smaller scale. And we have about approaching 1,000 employees through all of our subsidiaries, and we have about 430 companies we've invested in.
Wow.
I would say the lion's share are gaming companies.
430 companies in the last, what, 5 years? What period of time for those investments?
We had done under 100 in about a 6-year period, but there were some really good winners there, like Axie Infinity, Sky Mavis, OpenSea, Dapper Labs from NBA Top Shot, a bunch of blockchains, etc. And during the bull market, we were the most prolific investor in Web3, and we did another 300 something bets. We have a venture arm, and we also invested off the balance sheet. That's where I was. And then the dust settled, and we were a $70 million company with a few hundred employees, less than 100 investees. And then within a year and a half, we were a $6 billion company, and we have 1,000 employees, and we have 430 investee companies. So it was a heady time. And I looked at that large company, and I looked at all the 430 freaks and weirdos and deranged dreamers like your good self, like my good self as a long-suffering entrepreneur. And that's where I spend my time, kind of like an ecosystem evangelist, working with all these different investee companies, amplifying them and cajoling, cheerleading, counseling, and basically connecting.
You something you said just a moment ago about the kind of the transitions of Amazon. Why Web1 Amazon? Why would I buy anything when I can get my books there? It reminds me of I'm going to get this wrong, but kind of paraphrasing the quote from William Gibson, which is the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed yet. And
Indeed.
Very much kind of reminds me of Web3 is clearly already here, but the creating the reality out of the vision is something that still isn't happening in all places, or hasn't kind of distributed through all the different business models that it could potentially touch. So
it has a long way to go. Long.
Yeah.
We're not even early innings. We're still warming up in the bullpen, if I may use an American baseball metaphor, which I just did.
I take it that's because of your own sports preferences.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, as a Bostonian, you don't really have much of a choice. You're indoctrinated, and happily so.
So I just listened to your most recent Founder Insights podcast.
I'm sorry?
I just listened to your most recent Founder.
No, I said I'm sorry.
Oh. It's too early morning for your humor, Richard.
Hey, by the way, since no, it isn't too early for that sense of humor. What do you get when you cross an elephant and a rhino? Fellow dads, just doing dad jokes. That's it. Elefino.
That's more podcast friendly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little more podcast. You can edit that if you need to.
So I did listen to your podcast. You don't need to apologize. It was awesome. Inder from Pixelinks was on it. Was awesome. And just a quick shout out.
Amazing visionary he is.
Bright guy, and a great podcast series. I'm sure you can do the proper way of this, but if you haven't already subscribed and liked, do go find Richard Robinson.
Smash that subscribe button at Founder Insights podcast.animocabrands.com. Crush it.
So it was interesting. It was interesting to hear talk about both the past and the future of music monetization for artists and creators, because clearly, the music industry has gone through some huge upheavals over the last 20 odd years, right? Yeah. And at risk of making you or I sound a bit old, I'm going to say you yourself have been in the gaming industry. You've been in here long enough to have seen through several evolutions of the monetization, right? From shareware, if you remember that, to premium.
I remember my old phonograph.
Downloading off of a modem, premium subscription, free to play. There's been a similar evolution in the language, and I'm going to get this wrong, but so please correct me, and then I'd love you to riff off this. In the language of Web3 gaming, from play to earn to play and earn. What's driving that? And how does it compare to maybe the most common monetization model in mobile, which is, ad-supported free-to-play gaming? And, what learnings can we take from that?
That's great. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of parallels between music and gaming in general. And I think just broadly, we talked about Web 1, Web 2, and now Web 3. In Web 1, it was a little more platform centric, and Web 2, a little bit more app centric.
Mhm.
And now the idea is that it's atomized even more granularly to the creator.
Yeah.
So power to the creator. And we talked about that also too, these fiefdoms where we are vassals in the fiefdoms, and we give all of our time, treasure, and data, and we get nothing and like it, more or
Mhm.
less. You
Mhm.
don't really
Mhm.
own anything. You don't have any agency over it. I mean, we live in a shareholder capitalism society, and God bless capitalism. But there's shareholders and producers and consumers. But then with a lot of social media, it's like, all right, shareholders we're gonna continue to keep everything, but you're not only the consumer, we're also gonna make you produce as well
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
you have to actually, so you produce and you get nothing out of that. Um, and what about if you are the consumer and the producer, but also the shareholder? What
Mhm.
what if what if imagine a world? And I believe within a half decade, people are going to look back and go, wait a second, you're invested in a game where you don't truly own the assets.
Mhm.
You're unable to sell those assets on a secondary market. You don't have any true ownership. It's silly. Why would you put your time, treasure, and data into that if you're not being rewarded, and you also don't have any say in it
Yeah.
either? I mean, you look at a lot of Hollywood games now. Mario Bros. My boys love that. They're big Nintendo freaks, and it passed the test of the users because they made sure that they had the hardcore fans involved from the beginning. So
Yeah.
I think that's like, it's important to have fans not only, buy in, but, have ownership and have sort of some sort of governance and say. So that's the broad arching vision in the future of like broad digital asset management and ownership. And
Mhm.
the users will also have some sort of, say on what's going to happen. But then the users can also be rewarded as well too.
Mhm.
And, this play to earn, I mean, it's existed before. People mined gold or got wood from World of Warcraft. It was
Mhm.
just very,
And you could take that
uh,
offline and get real money for it potentially, and
yes, but you
what
had to you had to
randomize
take it
that.
offline. There wasn't any transparent way of doing it. It was
Mhm.
sort of like a gray market or even a
Yeah.
black market, really.
Yeah.
And that's kind of silly in a way because people wanted to do that transaction. It's just not something that these games were set up to do. And usually, broadly speaking, in a startup world, you have a thesis, just like you have a thesis on a game's going to work, movie's going to work, a song's going to work, a play in football is going to work, but then it doesn't usually survive contact with the real world.
Yeah.
So if you create a service, an internet app, and the users try to break it, that's actually not a bug, that's a feature. That's actually they're telling you where to take it.
Yeah.
Like I met
Yeah.
the founder of Instagram once, and he said that they were a check-in service. They were called Bourbon, BRBN.
Mhm.
He was in Beijing back in the day. Kevin Systrom, 2011, pre-acquisition at TechCrunch, and we were karaoke together. And he's like, "Yeah, I went on holiday to Mexico. I took my first break. My then girlfriend, now wife, and we were walking the beach, and it's like it's not going so great. Like people are checking in, but it's kind of like
Mhm.
Foursquare. People aren't using it." And she's like, "Well, you know, there are these users that I really like to watch." And he's like, "Oh yeah, but those are professional photographers and they
Mhm.
take pictures and then they side load them and they're like, I'm here in this park, or I'm here." Most people are like, I'm in this cafe or whatever, or I'm here at this cool party, and then they upload it. And he's like, yeah, but how do we make everybody a professional photographer? And she's like, just do that thing with the software thingy with your fingers on the keyboard. And he was like, what? And he wrote that code all night in Mexico and crashed the server, and Instagram was born. So
Yeah.
I think in some ways, like, yes, people are breaking that with World of Warcraft. And that's sort of like where things need to go. Do all users want to earn while they're
Mhm.
doing it? I think they want to be rewarded. I think they want to have ownership. I don't think people aren't in games to earn. That's not that's not why they're there. They're there because of this sort of like, there's a great article, you should link to it. I think it's called The Magic Circle, where you're just basically going into kind of, I'll find it somewhere, and
Mhm. We'll put it in
you're
the
you're
show
going
notes.
into
Yeah.
escape. and you're going into to really escape and to engage and to, you know, like there's many reasons to game, and usually earning is not a big part of that. But if you look back at a game like Axie Infinity, for instance, and you know, we were the first investors there, and that game was wildly successful after they introduced the Ronin sidechain to reduce gas fees.
Yeah.
And it got kind of taken over in that scholarships were born, where people are like, I own these Axies and I'm going to give a quote unquote scholarship to people, mostly in the Philippines. And then it spread, you know, Southeast Asia, around the world, developing nations. And then they're going to, you know, manage these Axies for me. They don't own the Axies. They can't afford them because they don't have the starting capital, but they can earn money from that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was not sustainable because it was, that's not exactly how it was originally set up to, you know, to play. But, you know, the way I describe it is the original Axie Infinity was maybe like, hey, I'm a horse breeder. Oh, you're a horse breeder. Wow, you must be rich. No. I got the horses for like really cheap. And the horses breed like crazy now.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, they must be crazy expensive to maintain. No. I have other people take care of them for me. Oh, you must have to pay a lot of money for those people to manage your horses. I do, but they make a lot of money from the horses. Like how does that happen? Like, how is that sustainable, right? At a certain point. But then if you think about it in the real world, and in many ways, Web3 seems a little bit difficult to decipher because Web 2 is so distorted. Web 2 is basically the internet is a giant copy machine, client server model. Everything's kind of given out for free. Let's try to do ad models or subscription models on top of that. But Web3 is really much more in line with how the real world works. For instance, I have a horse. Oh, you have a horse. Oh, you invested some money in a horse. That's pretty great. Yeah, you know, but I'm not that wealthy. And to be honest, I don't really play the horse. I don't ride the horse that much. I don't play with it that much. And I'm not like, you know, I'm not time rich either. Okay, so what do you do? It's like, well, I house the horse in a stable and I pay people to groom it, to walk it, to feed it, to you know, clean it, and to also, you know, administer medical care. Oh, okay, so it's costing you more money. Yes, but I also rent out that horse and people can play with it, you know, and ride it.
Second, though, I think the challenge with and apologies, ELI5 this for me a little bit here, Richard, but I think the challenge, and I want to double click on this because I think this is really interesting for how we map this back into into the advertising or into the in-game advertising world. The challenge with the horse analogy is we're still talking about money, and presumably that money has come from elsewhere. So when we talked about the other business models a moment ago, whether it's subscription or I don't know, shareware, and now in those models, the money's coming from the user into the system. In free-to-play gaming, the money's coming generally from advertisers into the system. I think the one of the challenges is that people like me, the view that I have, which is wrong, and then correct me on this, ELI5 this is, you know, we're just magicking value out of the bit chain, the crypto chain somehow. You know, it's just magically appearing. Where is the value coming into the system that can now be then shared out to all the participants of it? That kind of ownership and value share that you described.
Well, I mean, you know, certainly there can be speculation around some of the on-chain assets, whether it's cryptocurrency or some sort of coin or NFT, etc. Yes, that does exist. But just to finish out that horse analogy, right? So what if you like then? Okay, I bought the horse. I'm paying money. I'm paying people to help me manage that horse. But I'm also getting potentially some sort of subsidy from other people riding it, or not. Maybe I bought the horse, but I also pay other people to take care of the horse. So let's just think about it, the most simplistic model. I paid 30 grand for that horse. I sold a car. I sold some stock. It's a little indulgent, but like I love it. And I pay another, you know, $300 a month to take care of it. But when I ride that thing, I ride the hell out of it. And it's just great. And then I don't have to think about it again. Because when I'm in it, I'm in it. So it's the same thing with some sort of like game assets where you're like, I don't want to spend a lot of time going on these side quests. I'd love to be able to just level up and then focus on the stuff that really is engaging for me, right? So there's obviously a real world precedent there with World of Warcraft and a number of other games as well too, where people are willing to pay a subscription, pay for in-app purchases, pay for, pay for people to do stuff for them, or pay with their time. And then they get, it's the whole free to play movement.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be the same I don't think it'll be much different. Like people will pay with their time, and maybe there's and then that will be called play and earn, because they're earning with their time, which they're kind of already doing anyway. So it already exists, because you're earning access to the game by watching these ads and also participating just in the game. But then there are other things that you could do as well too, to add value to the game and be rewarded. It's just that those in-game rewards are, it's just not quite as, it's possible to do with virtual currency that's off chain, but I think that when everybody has access to that, then I think it will be a lot more fluid and interesting, and it will be a component of some people who will want to earn, or some people that will want to reduce their cost or time commitment by doing special things, adding, skilling up and being a designer or a blacksmith or some sort of, event manager or something in the metaverse, in the game, to add value and get more value in return.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And clearly one of the ways that value comes into gaming is through the interaction of brands, advertising, free to play mobile gaming, as I spoke about just a second ago. There's been a lot of different ways that brands have interacted with Animoca Brands portfolio companies, from full branded games, and I'm reading some stuff that off your websites elsewhere. Full branded games like WWE Undefeated. You've got Marvel, Star Trek, and NBA digital collectibles in Quid. You've got Adidas and Gucci actually buying land in the Sandbox. Even to, back to the music side, even to Pixelinks, one of their co-founders is Deadmau5. So can you talk a little more about how brands are engaging in that universe of all the Animoca Brands portfolio companies? And in particular, what I'd really like to get a deep dive into is how are brands moving from the let's just try something new, Web3 is interesting, it's new, let's give it a try, to how are they actually measuring the effectiveness in those engagements, and how are they thinking about brand safety, or are they on either of those?
Yeah, I think they're certainly thinking of all the above. And I think now the digital teams are quite veteran in that you and I came up where people are like, website, even, like that's, or even Zuckerberg was like, mobile apps, like, no, people aren't going to be on mobile. And then of course, that's the lion's share of their engagement, and social media, and you name it. Now there's a lot more awareness and ability to appreciate and engage, and I think a lot of agencies and just other digital experts out there are really keen to experiment with Web3. And I think right now we're still in an experimental stage. I think we're still in this, how does this work stage? Nobody's really cracked it yet. And all the way back from, I just saw Babylon. I don't know if you saw that movie. I really enjoyed it. The silence to the talkies. But even when you're going from like stage to silent films, they were more like stage sets. On the film.
Before that, what was radio? Radio was basically just reading plays in front of a microphone before each medium has to get figured.
And early television was like radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Just carrying that over, right?
Yeah.
They didn't understand. And then people, I can move the camera around and we can do other things, right? So I think a lot of Web3 is, with brands in any case, is still a lot of, Web2 centric, but maybe with some sort of, NFT collections or something digital, overlaid on top of it.
Digital. Tell me about that. I've not heard that term before.
Yeah. So, it's something that's actually, has some sort of physical, like a shoe, but there's
Yeah.
also a digital twin of that. And
Okay.
that's why, Nike made an acquisition in that space. And
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that, where you have things that are on chain.
Have you seen the David Hockney digital product, I guess,
No,
where
tell me.
um, so he's doing something where you can he's doing a bunch of paintings, quick paintings, and it was you getting the paintings, and then at some point you can choose to either get to actually have the painting delivered to you or have the NFT. And if you choose to get the NFT, then he burns the painting. It lights on fire,
Mm,
sets on fire in a gallery, and there's a whole exhibit or event around that. So at some point, I guess that's the difference. Is at some point that particular creator is breaking the digital link, right, and is kind of forcing
mm,
it, and that's probably part of the art of it as well, is to choose. But
mm.
okay, I hadn't heard that term of phygital. So both
Yeah, and that's fun, and that's probably a little bit stunt driven, but who knows? I mean, people burn NFTs now. People are burning paintings. Why not? And I think we're still very much in the let's experiment
yeah,
phase. And let's face it, there's still so few people online, even after the .com you know boom, 90, let's call it 94 to 2000, really 95 to
around about
2000,
that
96
time,
2000.
speaking of burning things, around about that time that the KLF burned £1 million on a Scottish island as their art thing. So burning your art or burning something for art is not is nothing new, especially in the .com era.
Sure. And I think people got burned a lot in the .com bust, and they were like, you know what, this is over. Like, this is like, it was a good experiment, but like, it's kind of silly. And back then it was like,
Yeah,
like to get online, and it was slow, and there was nothing on your mobile phone. And, people just sort of dismissed it. And there was, less than a couple hundred people, 100 million people online. And now, 5 billion.
yeah,
So the beautiful part is there's 5 freaking billion people that are online,
yeah.
and more people are getting more and more access through
Mhm.
better devices and better speeds, and also getting more access to um, cryptocurrency or digital currency or
Mhm.
some sort of something on chain. So right now we're very much in this bear market, building market, and there's going to be a lot of things that come out of that. And that's where we are right now. Like, I don't know, like, look at like how Web 2 came out of
Mhm.
Web 1 post .com bust, and
Mhm.
then things, for better or worse, became much more interactive with the launch of YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all of that. And then later, during the next downturn in '08, companies like Uber will respond, and you're like, okay, you can take location and phones and apps and payment, and also the service economy, gig economy post
Mhm.
Great Recession. And then things like Uber popped up out of that, and things that we wouldn't have necessarily predicted.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we are right now. I can't even necessarily wager to guess what's going to come out of it, but there's this great article, you should link it in the show notes too, called Crypto Bezos, and they talked to Jeff Bezos, and like, what's next? What's gonna, this is a while ago, and he's like, I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea what's next. Nobody has any idea what startup's going to work.
Yeah.
Nobody has any idea what movie's going to work, what music's going to work. That's why there's a 15,000th MCU movie, because people just want to play it safe. And but I know what's not going to change,
Mhm.
which is 3 things. The Amazon user wants stuff delivered yesterday. They want a great price, and they want to feel comfortable in their choice. They don't want unlimited choices, but they want to feel like really good about their choice. And rinse, repeat forever. Like,
Mhm.
that's going to be still the case in 2 decades.
Yeah.
Gen AI, like, nobody saw that coming really. And anybody that says they did was super inside baseball. And, like, that's going to change. That's going to change stuff up. But users still want those 3
Yeah.
things. And I think it's the same thing with games. Like, we don't have to lose our mind around games. The game itself, the mechanics and the actual, experience and the escapism and competitiveness and
Mhm.
fun, like, that's all going to stay there. but we're going to add things in there like provenance and the ability to have soulbound tokens to really connect with you and to be able to take, to be able to be rewarded. Like in some ways, there's this like super elite esports, and then there's just kind of everybody else in the middle, or
Yeah.
everybody else at the bottom, right? But I think there's actually going to be like a middle class of gamers where people can earn a living playing games in
But coming
many
back to the brands, and what's in it for a brand when they come into space, when they experiment, and do you think within Web3 and brand engagements, are we still from a brand perspective, are they still at the let's just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks kind of thing? Or within the advertising world, some of the metrics that brand advertisers think about now is instead of just did somebody click on it, they think about other forms of attention and engagement and trying to measure those. So are you seeing any kind of more sophisticated ways of measuring the success of a brand engagement in Web3, or is it still, and there's nothing wrong with this, but are we still at the phase where it's just, are the audiences coming? Is this just looking at it from a pure audience perspective or something else? What's in it for the brands when they come into the space, do you think, right now?
It's a little outside my swim lane, to be honest, because I'm mostly working with builders in the Web3 space. I'm not really bumping up against brands who
Yeah.
are working with like service agencies or other, existing larger players.
Yeah.
But I know this is that it's a double-edged sword in that if you look at NFT collections right now, they're mostly built around scarcity and status, which it's early stage, right? Just like in the very early stages of eBay, it was, Pez dispensers. And then
Yeah.
they moved in, Amazon was only books. And then they, you knew that they were going to be going, the logo as A with an arrow to Z. They were
Yeah.
going to do everything, but they started with books. And it seems silly and limited if you don't understand that. And the same thing with Uber, black cars for the one percenters. And
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, that's real. Or Tesla, the early Tesla, $130,000 sports car, right? So now with NFT collections, you look at like, Board API Club, or you look at, I don't know, Nouns or some other ones that
Yeah.
have like kind of held their floor price. It's really a small community that are holding on to it. And 99 point whatever percent of NFT collections are probably going to go to zero. And we launched an NFT collection to try, it's called Mochaverse. And the idea was to include utility and value from the launch, from the
Yeah.
get-go. So I think a lot of brands are using Web3, but using NFTs, and they're a little bit cautious and skeptical because they don't want their users to feel burned.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I bought this NFT and it shot to the moon, and then these degens came in and speculated, and then like the floor price crashed, and like now I lost a whole bunch of money buying, an NFT that's associated with this brand, and now the brand equity has been compromised because of that. So I think that's the double-edged sword, that internet and blockchain had a baby, and that's Web3.
Yeah.
And then finance and blockchain had a baby, and that's DeFi, decentralized finance. And that Venn diagram has been a little bit too much of an overlap.
Yeah.
If you're watching, I'm doing like two circles that are almost totally overlapped in the early last bull market. But in Web2, like there's quite a divergence, and there's some of what of an overlap. So I think the great part about Web3 is that it's on chain, and that, there's a lot of upside there. And the tough part there is that it's on chain, and that there's going to be a lot of people speculating and trying to sort of like break it.
Yeah.
So getting that circular economy and getting that robust, model in place is still needs to be worked out. And you look at like League of Legends, like it took them years after the iPhone launched to kind of crack what that looked like. I think iPhone launched 07. I want to say it was like 2011, 20-ish.
Yeah.
League of Legends launched. People were like, that's a good game, right? And even look at the early Facebook games. They were like very extractive and very, like let's do like, Farmville, and like you just like addicted in some sort of crazy loop, right?
Yeah.
So it's like not much different from what Axie Infinity was like. And like now things have really settled down, and people have figured out, and the platform has learned how to, not have people get their data taken and get into these ridiculous loops and get spammed. So I think we're still we're still in that stage right now, but I think I'm sure there's like some great examples of some brands doing some fun, innovative stuff, but in Web3, but I just don't know them off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's great. Thanks. In so coming back to no, enough about you, Richard. I want to talk about me and my businesses. So coming back to game advertising, and really, your overlaps there, the Venn diagrams. I think what's kind of interesting for me is right now the overlap between in-game advertising and Web3 is pretty minimal, and that should be the case because I think we're trying to solve some of the same problems. The free-to-play gaming, and apologies why I just kind of go on a little bit of a ramble here. Free-to-play gaming, as you know, is really about trading the player's time and their attention for a bit of playtime, right? So a brand will, or an advertiser will effectively say, watch my 30-second non-skippable interruptive video in order to then get 4 minutes of playtime, or whatever that equation is. With in-game advertising, we're trying to make that a little bit less intrusive and more beneficial to the player. But the problem come back to from an advertiser's perspective is still, now then, instead of just saying you're going to have to watch my video, to saying if it's within the game experience, you don't have to see that ad. It may be that you turn a corner in a 3D first-person shooter, you don't see it. So within the in-game advertising world, we kind of think about how do we incentivize that player to give attention, back to that attention and engagement, to give attention to, or to actually engage with an advertisement, with a brand that's otherwise within a game experience. How do we make it worth their time and interest to do that? So with that in mind, I guess, what do you think about in-game advertising, and where do you think the overlap between what AdInMo does and the play and earned world might be?
To now, I think there really hasn't been, like, besides Axie Infinity, there's been a few games, blockchain games, that have really gotten some traction. And oftentimes it's people talk about community, it's fueled by community. Sometimes that community is fueled by greed. It's just people that want to get in there and, I'm part of this community. Token go to moon. Okay, token go down. Bye-bye community. Is that a community?
Yeah.
Not really a community. And people talk too much about community as if it's some sort of panacea. Like, okay, how do you have a successful project or product or game? All right, you get a community. And then, right, just like, whoa, wait a second. Yeah. How does one get this community? And there are some mechanisms, like, for instance, we have a company that we acquired called Lowfish Studios in Australia, and they have a game called Phantom Galaxies, Gundam style, AAA game, and they drop tokens. They dropped NFTs for free, and to be able to get whitelisted around that, you had to play a mini game, and so it kind of was like a capture device to get people through that process, and they get potentially on the allow list, and then they got these free tokens, and then they took a 10% secondary on the tokens, and I think they made 150 ETH back when ETH was worth a little bit more. So let's say $500,000 just by giving away free stuff.
Yeah.
And then people could burn those tokens and then get one other more powerful NFT from that. And all along the way, they have to play mini games. And it was something that created community and kind of kept out the whales and kept out the bots best they could, and created this buzz. And there's 100,000 Discord, and yeah, it worked in, creating all this pre-buzz and feedback and revenue generated. And that's great. And I think that's kind of a model, kind of pre-launch. But in the future, there's going to be like, how do we get people to know that there is a token NFT being dropped? How do we get people into the Discord? How do we get people to engage, as we get, as we introduce more and more new levels? Like now it's a small market, and there's, a lot of, not as many projects, so it's easy. So there's going to have to be advertising to be able to drive users there. I mean, like, there's just some people think like somehow community is we're just going to scale that up into tens, hundreds of millions, billions of people. It's like, no, you're not. Like, it's going to get so noisy, and the cost of acquisition is going to be so high that you're going to just get drowned out. People are just going to be, completely unaware or apathetic to what you do. And so I think there's like advertising there. And then once in the game, like, sure, there's going to have to be other ways to cross sell and upsell and, get people, like, you have to have this circular economy where value has to be brought in. And there's kind of like, only the last time I checked is basically, users pay the money or advertisers pay the money, right? If there's a third way, I don't know what it is, right? We didn't crack that in Web 2, and I don't think it's going to be really any different in Web 3. It's just that advertising component hasn't been incorporated in yet. And I think, there's going to be this fluidity where people are able to, like, oh, okay, I can give my time and attention here, and I'm going to get rewarded by this advertiser here. And then I can put it in the game here. And then that's going to be translatable into an asset there. And then I can put that into the secondary market, or I can upgrade or whatever. And I think that's all coming. And I just, I don't know how in-game and Web 2 will be much different from Web 3. I think there has to be some kind of mechanism to show that there has been some kind of awareness and exposure and engagement. And, I think in some ways your model is better because people don't want to be interrupted. People just want to be driving a car and seeing a billboard, or having a car covered with something, or maybe, maybe their avatar wears a logo branded shirt or whatever. Right. And I think there's a much more elegant, less intrusive, powerful way, just like in the real world. Right. Just like there's, people interrupt you when you're maybe listening to a podcast or watching a TV show, but it's been shown that, like, people want to pay subscription so they don't have to be interrupted. But then, now, the in-game or in-movie advertising has, become much bigger now, because that's just sort of a natural progression. And I think your model is really validated by that. And it's just going to be more of the same.
Well, Richard, this has been awesome. If we're in a crowd saying, give it up for Richard, shout out, you're awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate all of your insights here, Richard. Do you listen?
Rivers, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care if you're driving. I want you to clap your hands together, or put down your phone while you're sitting on the toilet and just clap noisily and freak out other people in the bathroom stalls there. Just let it rip.
Thank you again, Richard, for sharing so many amazing insights. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content from AdInMo. The next episode of Inside In-Game Insights will be available next month. If you'd like to find out more about InGamePlay advertising, go to www.adinmo.com. That's ADINMO.com. Thank you very much. I listen to a ton of podcasts, and one of the ones I quite like is it kind of shows my boringness. It's actually a BBC Radio 4 radio program called In Our Time, and a famous interviewer, Melvin Bragg. It's this podcast. It's this scenario of he just gets really bright, sharp experts about a particular subject. Can be a very narrow subject. The year 1812 and what happened that year, whatever. And then so it's normally a radio program, 1 hour radio program. But the cool thing about the podcast format is then, at the end, he'll say, okay, look, that was our 1 hour. But now, if we've got a little extra time, this is the extra time portion. So Richard, what in our extra time here, this is totally unscripted, what questions do you think I should have asked you, or what did you want to say in our past conversation or get out that we didn't have that opportunity to say?
One question. I think we could take that in a few different directions. One thing that I'm very focused on, especially during this bear market, is the mental health aspect of entrepreneurship. And anybody who's out there who's a builder trying to do something, the most likely outcome is failure. And the journey along the way is pretty miserable, but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play?
The mental health,
Another
I think,
another reference from the 1800s. Um,
I say mental health.
yeah,
It's
go
a
ahead.
really interesting question for an interesting topic for a lot of reasons. Beyond just, every founder, and we have mutual friends that come onto this topic quite often. Paul Myers, who has his own, I think, podcast series, talks a lot about mental health as founders. You and I have, I'm sure, I've certainly had my ups and downs over the years. That's just
Yes.
natural for the journey, right? But the other part that we don't think about is as entrepreneurs, the products that we create have impact on other people's mental health as well. So everything
Sure.
from a game can have amazing positive impact. It's great. Or you can get down that World of Warcraft journey of a lot of bad outcomes just spending 24 hours a day playing a game. Or you mentioned Instagram, and again, one of my favorite do you listen to Scott Calloway and Kara Swisher?
Archie.
Yeah, Prof G, Pivot,
Yeah.
and he goes on about how Instagram in particular, but Instagram and Facebook have been overall detrimental to teenage girls'
No question.
mental health. Yeah, so I think that's something in general that not just the founder's mental health, but then the impact that we may have, positive or negative, on the
Yeah.
world. And I think about that a lot from the advertising perspective as well. No, no. Nobody needs advertising from a consumer perspective, but nobody says, "Well, give me some more of that good advertising." But it is the lubricant that makes the ecosystem that we're in work. And I always kind of wonder, am I creating a positive impact on the world from creating another way to get advertising in front of your eyeballs, or a negative impact? And that's what stresses me sometimes. So that's an interesting. Would love to dive into that a bit more with you.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, I guess writ large, we're either casting shadows or shining light. And I want to be additive to the world and I want to shine light in the best way that I can. But you think about advertising, I mean, one thing that you are enabling is people that couldn't afford to play games now have access to these games and this
Sure.
escapism and this entertainment because of free to play, because of these ads, and you're making them less interruptive and less intrusive.
In the same
So,
way that the,
there,
the Axie Infinity scholar model that you described, gave people
mm,
access to income streams potentially that they wouldn't have
yes.
access to otherwise. Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's going to happen a lot more. There's a gigantic portion, the vast majority of humankind is unbanked. And for them, a lot of the people in the Philippines, they never still unbanked, but they have a wallet, and that
Yeah.
wallet has currency in it. And it's not even cryptocurrency in the way that we think about it. It's they were using Smooth Love Potion, SLP, which is an on-chain token from the Axie Infinity game, and they were using that as a currency. And in many ways, like that's going to democratize and open up a lot of um, you know marginalized peoples around the world. And that's the promise I see in Web3,
Yeah.
is that it's basically giving power back to the creator, back to the people. And sure, like, is entertainment distracting and can it be extractive and can it be negative? Like, certainly gaming
Yeah.
and movies and even music, right?
Mhm.
There was this one comedian, Tom Cotter, who talked about how, that song from uh that Christmas song where, Baby It's Cold Outside was canceled. Because he's trying to keep her in, but then you know, WAP was number one song, right? And we're all kind of like upside down crazy town in many ways, right? Like
Uh,
you're either in or out. Um, and I believe that try to be in a way that's helping the world to be incrementally a little bit better. And I think entrepreneurship is one of the best ways to do that. And I think
mhm.
it's really important for people to have peer coaches. I think
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. So I was part of the entrepreneurs organization for many years. I helped start the Beijing chapter, and having somebody you can just talk to is important because there's such a sexiness around entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's like so not sexy. It's so unsexy, but people are so sort of, they have this cognitive dissonance around it where they're like, they don't even want to admit it. How's everything going? Oh, Rich, it's up and to the right. It's great. Oh, come on. Like, it's me. How's everything going? Well, I mean, like, it's not easy, but it could be good going back. No, really, come on, buddy. How's it going? I want to go home. I can stop, mommy.
Yeah.
Mommy, I want to get off the ride. I want to go home. Right. And like, that's how a lot of people feel, but they can't do that. And just being able to voice that, I think is powerful.
So beyond the kind of finding a peer group and ideally a mentor, do you have any other personal Rich Robinson tips or techniques for
meditation? Meditation. It's a superpower. It's the one thing that I wish, even though when I wore a younger man's clothes, I probably would have not heeded that advice.
Yeah.
I did a Vipassana 10-day silent meditation retreat about a decade ago. And I could not keep up with that requirement of like 2 1-hour sessions a day of Vipassana, but I got quote unquote certified in transcendental meditation, tm.org. That took 4 days. It's like 2 hour day 1, 1 hour day 2, 1 hour day 3, 30 minutes day 4. And then boom, you got it. And Ray Dalio talks about it, how he directly attributes his success to that, and Jerry Seinfeld and Schwarzenegger and others, right? So people that are, very successful and very much engaged, it doesn't make you softer. It makes you much more focused and gives you clarity and gives you equanimity and the ability to have an appropriate response. One of the biggest reasons why startups fail is that founders fight. And if you're able to, there's stimulus and then there's emotion and then there's space and then a response. I just didn't know about that space. I didn't give myself a chance for that space. And to be able to have more creativity and clarity and focus, and that's a superpower. And that's the only way forward is through meditation.
I don't know if I mentioned to you, based on certain friends of mine, including yourself, saying how transformative TM had been to their own lives. I signed up for a TM course, I guess about 5 years ago, the kind of intro to TM.
Oh.
And it was usual. I signed up, or I went in to sign up for it, and I was like, well, I know my wife is into this kind of stuff too, so how much would it cost to add her on as well? And I'm like, just a little bit extra. It's like, oh, well, I've got 2 teenage daughters as well. That might be useful for them. They're stressing with exams. How much for them? And just a little bit extra. So the whole family went together to learn how to do TM. I don't know what the proper term is, but how to TM. And I think I have definitely found benefit from it. I don't meditate as often as I should, and I know that. And I also know that when I do meditate, I am a better human being.
Yes.
My younger daughter is also similar. My wife and my older daughter probably haven't stuck to it, but my younger daughter's like me, that she does it when she thinks about it, and when she does do it, she knows, God, why aren't I doing this more often? Yeah.
But your wife is already a much better human being than you are already.
That's
so
a given. Yes.
Much, right? So
that's a given, Richard. Yeah.
That's great. Excellent. Love it. Thanks for sharing that. That's fantastic.